Jeremy Hunt has hinted, yes him, that any tax cuts in the budget will be made responsibly, whatever that means, as new polling sees the Tory support at its lowest level in more than 40 years.
Well, the Chancellor is reportedly considering further cuts to public spending to allow for more tax giveaways, with Labour accusing the government of playing politics.
Joining us once again in the studio, our political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald and the deputy editor of Spikes, Fraser Myers. Alicia, Fraser, welcome. Can we just sort of, whatever your political persuasion, this poll today, what's it called?
Ipsos.
That one. 40-year low. Wipeout. If this is true, 25 seats. Is this... I said it to you earlier. For 2 years, the Tory party has been trailing Labour. Most people would tune in this morning and say it's the beginning of the end, isn't it? Get on with it.
Yes, and as we've said countless times, whenever there's a really damning poll towards the Conservatives, it doesn't necessarily mean that this will 100% carry across to the general election, but it does signify something really quite big and really something that is super, super significant. And that is that public opinion seems to be very, very much drifting away from the Conservative Party. Not always to the Labour Party, but definitely away from the Conservative Party, although definitely we can see in this poll that Labour are doing really, really quite well, 27 points ahead of the Tories. It's
interesting because politics is all about, you can talk about policy, Fraser, but there's also you get a feeling, don't you? You get a feeling when Blair came in, you get a feeling that there's no bounce, there's no kick for the Tories, is there at all?
No, not at all. There is just a sense of exhaustion of a government completely on its last legs, and you think about, who is going to vote for them? Who in their right mind would vote for them at this stage? They've lost their traditional supporters because, the tax burden is so high. They've lost all of the new supporters that they won over post-Brexit because they're not seeing, the transformation in the economy that they were promised. So, again, what are they left with? A rump.
And what do you think Labour would do differently? If it was Rachel Reeves in exactly the same position, standing in front of us tomorrow, giving the budget, what could she give?
Well, unfortunately, it looks like Labour isn't going to do very much, very differently at all. And actually, many of the things that are constraining Jeremy Hunt, the fact that he is looking very much to the Office for Budget Responsibility for guidance, essentially letting that hamstring his decisions. Labour says it wants to put the OBR's forecast into law. So actually, things can only get worse under Labour, unfortunately, which is an incredible,
And that's what
position.
she said, that she would put it...
She wants to create a sort of fiscal responsibility lock, which would essentially treat the OBR's predictions as a legal requirement, or their,
And you see issues with that because...
I see issues with that because at the moment, we are stagnating as an economy. Essentially, we need to be either spending more or cutting taxes. We need to do something to get us out of this slump. We need to take bold decisions. But I think if you follow the guidance of the technocrats, you're only going to stagnate further.
I think it's very interesting. I made this point to Alicia earlier as well. I'd love your take on this, Fraser, that I think the British people have woken up. I think they've woken up post-Brexit, post-pandemic, and I think they've realised that the politicians probably don't always do what they're going to say they're going to do. And even the response to tax cuts this week is, I think if you went out and about, people would go, we're going to have to pay for it. Now, that never happened. But for me, what's really tragic at 58, right, is that in 2010, we were skint. There was that note from Liam Byrne. In 2024, we're skint. Nobody seems to have long-term policies to benefit this country in its entirety. It's all about saving the vote, getting back in power. I think it's a disgrace. I think British people deserve better, and I think they're hacked off. I really, really do.
Yeah, I think that's right. Possibly the most exciting thing we're expecting from this budget is a 2% cut in national insurance, which is what we actually already had come in force in January. So that, and if that didn't make a difference to the economy, if that didn't boost the economy, and it didn't boost people's feeling about the Conservative Party...
What would you do differently then, all of you? What would you do? How do you kickstart something that's supposed to be working and patently isn't? No social services, highest taxation in 70 years, no military, a problem with our borders, things going on in the world. If you woke up this morning and watched this like me, you go, what the hell?
Oh, well, if we had the answers to that, we'd be in number 10 doing something really high-powered.
Does anybody have the answer?
Well, seemingly at the moment, no. But I think this is a really bleak place to be in politics, really, isn't it? When you look at two of the main parties and most of the public feeling like neither really, really has the answers to do something drastic and to actually change where we are. But I think the way you've got to look at it is who will do the better job? Will we see an improvement over a period of 5 years? Because you're talking about short-termism.
I don't think people vote like that. I don't know what Nick thinks. I think people will vote for Labour, if that's their choice, because they're hacked off with the Tories. I want to know what people are going to do to make this country... But I want to know what either party's going to do to make people's lives better.
But I think people sometimes, as we've seen with the Brexit vote, perhaps, people vote for change,
they do.
without necessarily knowing what change will bring. We could end up being in a worse situation. We could end up being better off. But people do use their vote to protest, don't they? And say, well, actually, I would like my life to change. It's just whether or not you can trust either party to bring that about. But it's good news potentially for drivers with a freeze to fuel duty. Bad news maybe for people who like to vape or smoke.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because 10 years or so ago, you would never have heard anything about the budget until budget day. And now we seem to know everything that's going to be announced in the run-up to the budget.
That's what I mean. They're even playing politics by leaking stuff that's central to our economy. That's what I mean. To me, it all feels like a political game, Fraser. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and unfortunately, all of the policies are just kind of tinkering with taxes here or there. You know, there isn't any kind of grand vision behind it. No. It's just a hope that, if we leak this particular, tax break, then that will appeal to X group of people.
Gauge whether it's going to work.
Yeah,
right?
Does this play well with the focus groups? There isn't any kind of grand vision here to, actually take the economy further, or even just to inspire us into thinking that it's worthwhile.
Is that people who support Liz Truss, for example, will say she had a grand vision. What she did was drastic, what she did was forward-thinking, and it was with the view to make people's lives better. So what the government have to do now is make sure they don't have a replay of that and make sure that they don't do anything that is too drastic.
I'm not going to stick up for Liz Truss at all, but the two conviction politicians in my lifetime are Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair. And the public stood by two people who wanted to make change. I don't see that conviction politician anymore in this country. I see we've had them, we'll have them. They've done this, we'll do that. No continuity. A health service said everybody should get together and try and make better. We don't do that anymore. And I genuinely, but I said this to you yesterday, I think it will be the lowest turnout of a general election in years because I think the average British person is fed up to the back teeth with politics. I don't think they respect them anymore.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you're seeing, obviously Labour is ahead in the polls, but a lot of that has to do with the collapse in Tory support. It's not as if every voter is, suddenly going to turn out for Keir Starmer. A lot of people are just going to stay at home because they're fed up with the whole thing. Are they wrong to be fed up with the whole thing? I don't think that's,
I don't think you can tell people.
Alicia, one thing that people do feel very passionately about at the moment is the war in the Middle East, everything that's happening in Gaza. And obviously, with the appointment of George Galloway late last week, we're seeing it even more integrated into British politics. How much do you think that's going to play out over the next year?
Well, it's really interesting because drawing on that poll that we were just talking about, it doesn't seem that Labour's position on this has massively impacted their point lead at all. In fact, it hasn't. If we're looking at that particular poll, nothing has changed. In fact, it's the Conservatives who've gone further down in the poll ratings. So that would maybe suggest that this isn't going to have a massive impact in the way that people vote at the general election. But then when you hear voices like George Galloway, who pretty much won that by-election on the conflict in Gaza, it does make you think that there is something happening that where the religious element of this and the divisive element of it has become a bit of a political hot potato. And it's
George Galloway.
I think it's the humanitarian aspect as well. At the
but
end
not
of the
from
day,
his point of view, Nick. That man there on screen.
I'm talking about voters.
No, I know. But this is what annoys me. I'd love your take on this, Fraser Myers. If I actually genuinely believe that piece of whatever on screen was talking about the people of Gaza rather than himself, he's used that absolutely. I have a very good friend, Big Steve, who lives in Rochdale. That town is on its backside, Fraser, and I don't believe for 1 second that George Galloway gives a damn about the people of Rochdale. I think he gives a damn about his ideology. Sorry, said it.
I think it was sad for people of Rochdale that they essentially only had a vote on Gaza rather than on local issues, things that
you can be interested in Gaza and worry.
Absolutely,
but also
the two aren't mutually exclusive. But that by-election was almost entirely about the conflict in the Middle East, and we've actually seen that before in lots of other constituencies where essentially foreign conflicts have been imported. The Labour Party has done it a lot, so they have no.
He said overnight he's going to go for Angela Rayner's constituency. He said overnight that he might team up with Jeremy Corbyn and the Workers' Party of Great Britain will bring down our Ange. What do you make of George Galloway?
I think, he is, in a sense, a unique figure. He has the sort of charisma, I guess, he has a certain appeal that could, that's won this seat. I don't know necessarily that his party can make gains in a similar way. There are also a lot of unique circumstances around Rochdale. We had the Labour candidate completely implode. By-elections are on a low turnout. It could be a very, very different picture at the general election.
He's only going to be an MP for a matter of months, to be fair, because he's not going to win at the next election, is he?
You don't know that.
Well, we don't know, do we? We'll have to see. Well, thank you so much.
That was very mature, Alicia. She looked at me like this and went, well, you don't know.
Well, because she's a professional. Thank you so much to Alicia Fitzgerald and Fraser Nelson from Spiked.